Greetings. In 1969, the crimes of Charles Manson shocked the nation. In a sense, it brought an end to the counterculture movement that rejected fundamental Christian values. A wealth of information has trickled out over the years about these horrific crimes and about those that committed them. Most recently in a book called Chaos by Tom O'Neill. But it doesn't answer the question of why Manson murdered Sharon Tate and her household, or the LaBiancas. Instead, he takes us down an MK Ultra rabbit hole. Before I read Chaos, I was convinced that Manson's murders at the home of Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski was a simple case of a jealous husband arranging the murder of his cheating wife and her lover. After reading Chaos, I have become certain of this. Charles Manson was a 5'2" Jewish man named Charles Mills Maddox. He adopted the surname of his stepfather. Because he was evil but small and weak, he learned to be cunning and vicious. He committed many felonies, including several murders, long before the tragic killings that made him world famous. By age 32, Manson had spent half his life in prison. When he was released from prison in March of 1967, he moved to San Francisco. He was too old for the hippie movement blossoming in California, but because he was a drug dealer, he found himself in the thick of it. He used to visit the free clinic on Haight and Ashbury, which was the heart of the counterculture movement, where he would get all the free LSD he wanted. Besides being a drug dealer, he was a pimp. He befriended young runaway girls, then got them hooked on drugs and pimped them out. He was also a bisexual prostitute. He was a guru of sorts, spouting his philosophy to whomever would listen. Manson believed that the white race would be wiped out in a race war, and somehow he and his white trash followers would survive. The white survivors would then become rulers. Manson and his comrades moved to LA from San Francisco to an old deserted cowboy movie set they referred to as the Ranch, and made it his base of operations. From there, he continued his criminal career of drug dealing, theft, and prostitution. He established good relations with bikers who availed themselves of his drugs and prostitutes. This helped him expand his criminal activities. This is the image of Manson that the prosecution and the LA police emphasize: a crazed guru and a career criminal cut off from society. In reality, Manson had aspirations of becoming a rock star and establishing himself as an accomplished artist in Hollywood. Using his prostitutes and ample supply of drugs, Manson had wormed his way through the back doors of the Hollywood elite. The truth about how far he penetrated into the celebrity elites in Hollywood is a carefully guarded secret that only trickled out slowly over the decades and is still trickling out. Manson befriended Terry Melcher, who was the son of Doris Day. Doris Day was an A-list actress as well as a singer whose songs topped the charts. She established a music production company. With the help of his celebrity mother, Terry Melcher became an industry-leading music producer who collaborated with some of the biggest music artists of the time, including the Byrds, the Beach Boys, Glenn Campbell, the Mamas and the Papas, Wayne Newton, Frankie Lane, Andy Newman, and Bobby Darin, as well as others. According to the book Chaos, Melcher was very much under Manson's influence. Manson played the guitar and wrote some songs. Melcher tried to get him a record deal until his mother put a stop to it. Manson lived with Dennis Wilson for about 4 months. Wilson was a rock star in the super band The Beach Boys. It was probably through Melcher that Manson met Dennis Wilson. During that time, Manson met Neil Young, who used to frequent Dennis Wilson's home. Young was a successful solo artist who collaborated with the band Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, so Manson was piped into the Laurel Canyon scene as well. Young and Manson were close enough that Young bought Manson a motorcycle. Manson once auditioned for a part in the TV sitcom The Monkees. There are many rumors about other famous celebrities that Manson met and knew well. It is not believable that the LA police did not know that Manson kept such distinguished company while he was on trial for multiple counts of murder. Yet this never came out either in the trial or the press at the time. Fate would connect Manson with another short Jewish man, Roman Polanski. Polanski was a degenerate. He is currently a fugitive from American justice for raping a minor. While living in Poland, Polanski became an intelligence asset for the Polish Communist Party. Polanski is a celebrated director who directed the film Rosemary's Baby. He also wrote the screenplay. The film was a hit when released in 1968 and has become a cult classic. It is about a cult that manipulates a woman into giving birth to the son of the devil. Polanski married a trophy wife, a beautiful, stereotypical California girl named Sharon Tate. Sharon was a talented and well-established actress. For Sharon Tate, the marriage was abusive and frightening. Some of this abuse is cataloged in O'Neill's book. Before her marriage to Polanski, Sharon Tate was dating a man named Jay Sebring. Sebring was a very successful hairdresser. He became the go-to hairdresser to the stars. He was such a ladies' man that they made a movie about him called Shampoo, starring Warren Beatty. Jay Sebring and Sharon Tate had been a couple for years and remained friends when Sharon was married to Polanski. My theories about how the murders unfolded and who is responsible are my opinion, but I think you will find my speculation to be justified in the end. Polanski was away from home much of the time, sometimes for months. Sharon and Polanski had an open marriage. The relationship between former lovers Sharon and Jay was more than friendship. It was more than just sex. It was love. Polanski was aware of this and became insanely jealous. Jay Sebring was a good-looking, easygoing, popular guy, while Polanski was a small, ugly control freak. Polanski felt inferior to Sebring. Sharon and Jay seemed to belong together. They were a handsome couple. Anyone who did not know who Polanski was and saw him with Sharon would say to themselves, "What is this beauty doing with a guy like that?" It is very likely that Polanski knew Terry Melcher. Terry Melcher was a big-shot producer who traveled in the same social circles as Polanski. Polanski rented the house Melcher lived in just after Melcher moved out. Polanski would have known about Manson as well, either through Melcher or from the criminal element Polanski surrounded himself with. The book Chaos claims that Polanski associated with criminals and even had a drug dealer living in his house, an old comrade from Poland, much to the dismay of Sharon. Polanski must have learned that Manson was trying to get his big break in Hollywood, either in the music industry or as an actor. Polanski was in a position to get Manson that break. If Polanski wanted Manson to murder his wife and her lover, all he needed to do was send a message to Manson that if his wife and her lover were murdered, Polanski would ensure Manson would have a Hollywood career. Charlie had killed before for much less. Polanski would not even have to meet Manson. Terry Melcher was the perfect go-between. He was not a moral person, which is why he was friends with Manson in the first place. Melcher being the go-between for Polanski would explain his irrational behavior when he was interviewed by Tom O'Neill for Tom's article on how the Manson murders affected the Hollywood community 30 years later. Melcher was at first defensive, then bribed O'Neill for a favorable portrayal in the article. Then he threatened him, and after the interview called his contacts at the LA prosecutor's office to complain. In short, Melcher went into full panic mode. O'Neill assures us that after the murders, Melcher visited Manson at the ranch. If Melcher was Polanski's go-between, He would have to visit with Manson after Charlie completed his side of the deal. He would have to assure Manson that he would be rewarded as promised. At the time of the murder of his wife, Polanski was in London scouting filming locations for his next film. His wife was in California 8.5 months pregnant. According to O'Neill, she pleaded with Polanski to come home, but he gave no indication he would be home for the birth of their first child. Polanski wanted to be far away from his home in California and from his wife when Manson struck. When Polanski got the news that his wife had been murdered, he immediately flew to L.A. He went to his home, which was now a crime scene, where he had a preliminary interview with the police. When a man's wife is murdered alongside her lover, the prime suspect is always the husband. At this early stage of the investigation, the police, regardless of their suspicions, had to treat Polanski as a victim whose wife was brutally murdered. After viewing the crime scene, according to O'Neill, Polanski had an emotional meltdown so authentic that O'Neill concluded that Polanski could not have had anything to do with his wife's murder. But Polanski could have been having an "oh my God, what have I done" moment. Immediately after visiting the crime scene, Polanski moved into a VIP apartment on Paramount Studios property. Polanski then lawyered up and refused to talk to the police. In fact, the police couldn't even get through the front gate of the studio. This is not the way an innocent man would behave who was trying to find his wife's killer. Even so, Polanski was never treated like a suspect and never became one. 4 months after the crimes, Manson and his family were arrested and the circus trial began. There were actually 3 separate similar murders committed by Manson and the family. The first was months before Sharon Tate was murdered. It was near the ranch. The family tortured a man for days because they mistakenly believed he had inherited money and they were determined to steal it. They finally killed him and wrote messages on the wall in blood. Next came the murders at Sharon Tate's home. They murdered 6 people, including Sharon's unborn child. Sharon Tate and Jay Sebring were tied together with a rope and murdered together with a knife. The others were chased down and killed with knives. Pig and other words were written on the walls in blood. Lastly came the La Bianca murders. They were also butchered and words were written in blood on the wall, including the words Helter, Skelter, which was popularized by the Beatles song of the same name. At the La Bianca home, Charlie's accomplice misspelled the word Helter Skelter. She spelled it Healter. The La Bianca murders were committed to draw attention away from the murders at the home of Sharon Tate, the murders for which there was a motive. The idea was to give the appearance that there was no specific motive for these crimes that were so similar and obviously committed by the same people. They wanted the police to conclude that the killers were members of some satanic cult choosing people at random to brutalize and murder. But why did Manson specifically choose the La Bianca home? Tom O'Neill tells us that Manson was familiar with the neighborhood because he had spent the night in the house of an acquaintance which was very close to the La Bianca's home. But what O'Neill doesn't tell us is that the previous owner of the La Bianca house was none other than Walt Disney. This is fairly well known now and has been for some time, although it wasn't known during the Manson trial. What is more, the night of the murders of the La Biancas was the opening night of the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland. It is worth noting that the words mansion and Manson are almost identical, but that is probably a coincidence. The point is that Manson knew that the La Bianca's home was Disney's old house. This is the kind of thing you mention to visitors when a famous person lives in the neighborhood or used to live there. Manson would have also known the date of the grand opening of the Haunted Mansion ride. This would have been advertised everywhere and often at the time. The time and place of the La Bianca murders were not a coincidence. This was Manson's style, Charlie's poetic touch. Charlie was very meticulous about his crimes. According to O'Neill, he even went to the Tate home after the murders, before the crime was discovered, to ensure everything was just so. This was an insanely risky thing to do. Manson deliberately had the letter A added to the word Helter. If you can spell Skelter, you can spell Helter. This extra letter A, written in blood, is the scarlet letter. It is hidden in plain sight and stands for adultery. It was no mistake. At Sharon Tate's house, Manson symbolically had the two lovers killed while tied together. This also symbolizes they were killed because they were committing adultery. Manson would not care about people committing adultery, but Polanski did. Officially, Roman Polanski is not connected with these murders, but unfortunately for him, Charlie Manson signed his work. The Manson murders seem to be a manifestation of evil, a tragedy long in the making and perhaps the natural consequence of a community steeped in sin. It is very much like Manson himself was conjured up. In a way, Charles Manson was the child of Satan born into the world in Rosemary's Baby. Another film about the Antichrist, The Omen Part 3, is about the Antichrist grown up. Likewise, the story of Charles Manson is Rosemary's Baby 2. It is about another son of Satan, all grown up. Produced, directed, and written by Roman Polanski, starring Charles Manson and Sharon Tate. Even Manson's name, Man, Son, suggests the Antichrist. It is the opposite of Son of Man, which is how Jesus often referred to himself. Manson was an archetype of the Antichrist, who flourished in the microcosm of Sodom and Gomorrah, that is, the world of the Hollywood celebrity elites. He was able to get inside because of their sinful ways. These talented artists, many of whom were true geniuses, should have been repulsed by Manson. Instead, he fit right in. Today, that microcosm of evil has spilled out and spread throughout the West. Once Christian nations have become Sodom and Gomorrah, and the real Antichrist is sitting on a throne in the place where people exist as spirit and soul. Some may ask why Manson never accused Polanski. He probably feared for his life. Not just because of Polanski. A lot of wealthy public people would not want Charlie telling their dirty secrets. Neither would the LA police want Charlie talking about the things they should have known and probably knew, but never reported. Please visit my channel dedicated to end times prophecy. Thank you.